Hey everybody, welcome back to Watch and Carry. Another customer mod for you today. This one is going to be the Casio GShock. And if you take a look here on the case back, we have the model number GWX-5600B. Okay, we've got a nice multicolored metal bracelet and clasp here. Metal shroud here that covers the inner case. You can kind of see the difference between the case here on the inside in black and the shroud here in metal on the outside. And this customer wants to have a colored filter put on this. So as I mentioned with some of my other mods, when you have a negative display, it's not as simple as just putting a color over it because the display doesn't have enough light because of the negative. So for example, if we wanted to put something usually with high contrast like orange, and I put this over the black, you can make out the orange a little bit, but not really a whole lot. Or you can try something else light like pink, right? And that's also not showing up very well. So what has to happen here is you need to convert the watch first to a positive display, which means you have that white background with the black numerals, and then you add the color filter on top of that. So we're going to go ahead and get started here by taking apart the watch. Really cool looking bracelet, by the way. You just take your little lug tool, go to the punch end of that, and just separate that spring bar out. Like so. Okay, I like to set these spring bars to the side because they get easily lost. And then we'll go to the watch here. So sometimes what we'll have is the bracelet or strap will have a little guard that goes over the case back, in which case you have to remove the strap. Here I don't really have that problem. I have full access to the screws in the case back, so I'm going to leave the bracelet on. I'm going to take our small screwdriver here and get these screws off. Okay, the work mat that I'm using right now is made out of soft silicone. So in this case, it's okay for me to put this watch face down. It also has a raised bezel on the front, so it helps to guard the display. But if you don't have this type of mat at home, just make sure you have a soft surface that you're working on. Okay, we got those 4 screws off. Here's our case back. Okay, don't forget about this little O-ring here that comes on the back. I like to take this off, so it makes it easier to apply. Now when you're taking this off, especially if this is an older watch, it'll tend to stick because of that oil to the case back. Let me cut down the glare here. So your tendency might be to just kind of yank this whole thing off. When you do that, you actually stretch the O-ring a little bit, and then the O-ring becomes just ever so wide for the trough that it sits in, which makes it almost impossible to put back properly when you reassemble the watch. So here I'm just gently kind of like separating the O-ring from the case back here, and then I'm not pulling it at all. Once it's completely loose, then I will separate this out and set it off to the side. So really do not want to be pulling on that O-ring. Okay, so now we have the internals here. We have this little rubber or silicone piece here. Set that off, and now we have access to our module. Now on some other G-Shocks you might have a sensor, especially if you have an ABC function, altimeter, barometer, and compass. For that barometer you might have a little wire harness kind of going from one of the buttons to the module, so you want to be careful when separating that you don't yank anything. So I'm looking here around the perimeter of the module and I don't see any wire ribbons that I have to worry about, so I'm just going to go ahead and find a place to lift up on. I have a toothpick here. There we go. So we'll just lift that up and pop out the module, and then I'm immediately going to replace the case back without the O-ring over it loosely, just to prevent or limit how much dust gets into that case. Okay, so once you disassemble everything, this is kind of where you're at right now. Okay, now when it comes to this part here, let's look for some landmarks before we remove things any further. Just to make sure it's easy to reassemble again. So we have two golden springs here on the left. Okay, those don't come off from that side. And we're going to lift this over. Take a look here. We have another spring here, you can see. That's probably to connect to the speaker on the case back. So I want to pull on that gently. Sometimes those springs come off, like in the world times. And by design, this looks like one that will come off. It just has to be twisted out of its hole. Okay, I'm just kind of pulling gently here. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's coming off. Okay, so I don't think I have to worry about anything falling off. So what I'm going to start to do now is separate the module. We have these clips here in silver all along the perimeter. You can take your lug tool and just gently wedge it between that clip and the black plastic housing. As you separate this out, you'll probably notice the display start to fade and then eventually disappear because the battery is being separated off. There you go. Okay, so it looks like we've separated all the clips. I'm going to take a toothpick here, just gently lift up on this to separate it further. Okay, so we have this back piece that came off, so I'll separate that off. Looks like we have one more clip here at the top. It's a different design here in black. There we go. You can just kind of take a toothpick and separate that off. Okay, then I'm going to lift up gently on this. Set that off to the side. Here's our spring, okay, that connects to our speaker. So that spring can easily be removed, or it can just fall off if you're not paying attention. So what I like to do is kind of lift up on it now. Okay, and remembering that it's that hole right there, I'm going to take a Sharpie and just put a small mark there. Okay, it might be hard to pick up on camera, but there's a little black circle now around that hole. And I'm going to replace the spring so that way, if the spring comes undone again, I have a marker to tell me where to put that spring back, because there's just so many holes here on this part of the module. And I'm going to set this off to the top like that. Okay, now let's go to this part here. Let's flip this over carefully. Okay, looks like this can just kind of separate on its own, I believe. There you go. I'm paying attention to these two gold springs here because those can easily fall out. So I'll just kind of do this, open it up like so. Set one part down, set the other. I'm going to set it down in the orientation that I took it apart. At this point, I'll probably take a picture. So right now on my camera, I just took a screenshot of this just in case I get lost with reassembly. I know the orientation of these pieces when it comes to reassembling it again. So this is the 6 o'clock, this is the 12 o'clock. For the black piece, you can see here we have this circle here and these two golden springs kind of spread out, and then these two golden springs here on the right side as well. And then here on the left, we have this black circle here towards the upper left, and then another one towards the bottom middle. Okay, then this part here in copper at the top. Okay, that is a landmark, and of course also a caution point. You don't want to touch that at all. So now that I know kind of where things go, okay, and also taking note that the black squares here are going to meet the grid here in green, not this part, right? So this part will go down to that part. So just take pictures as you're disassembling. It just makes things easier to reassemble. Okay, the display is still on the other side of this, so we need to go just a little bit further. Let's zoom in here. Okay, we have these two golden springs on the side. Yep, they're pretty loose. Okay, one thing to take note of here with the spring, let's get this in camera. Okay, you'll notice here that it's wider towards one end and thinner towards the other. The thinner part is actually the part that gets inserted first from this side of the module, so just keep that mental note. I'm going to take the spring, and I have these little slots here on my workstation where I kind of put the smaller pieces so that way they don't roll off. There we go. We have another couple springs here in gold. Okay, right over here and here. So let's see if I have to worry about those. Okay, looks like they're stuck on there. I don't think those move out. So I'm being very gentle here with kind of manipulating these springs. Yeah, they stay in place. So I'm going to try to figure out how to separate the rest of this. I have this little black cage divider here on the back. Okay, if we go to this side here, you notice there's this small little line there. It looks like if I separate that, it should loosen everything else. I need to get a really thin tool here. There we go. It's actually, let's go here from the side. I just took a guitar pick here that I've sharpened at the end, and I gently lift it up on this little plastic divider, and then let's get the other side lifted. There we go. So we'll lift that part up and separate that out. Okay. You notice here that one of the golden springs stayed in place. The other one actually went with the piece I just removed in black here. So here's that spring. That's completely fine if it separates. You just have to make sure you put it back properly when it comes time to reassembly. So I'm actually going to take this little spring here and again put that in my little parts tray. And this one also, because it's very easy to come undone. Oops, separate that out. Okay, like so. Okay, so let's put this back where we were. Okay. So this is where you should be right now if you kind of look at all the parts we've disassembled. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, let's lift up gently on this part here. Set that to the side. You have this part in white here and another one here at the bottom. Go ahead and lift those up, and let me put them side by side. Okay, and you can see here they're the exact same length, so it doesn't really matter which one goes where. Sometimes, like on the Casio AE 1200s and 1300s, one of those is longer than the other, so it does matter. Okay, here's the back of our display. And let's see how we can separate this from the front. Usually you can just kind of push this from one side or the other. I'm going to take a soft microfiber cloth here. Kind of push up from behind. Let me see if that works. No. Oh yeah, actually that's it. So we'll push up from the front actually, gently, and that will separate the display. Okay, there we go. And there is our display right there. Okay, this part here we're going to set to the side. Okay, so once you're done disassembling, this is kind of what your work area should look like. Okay, I also try to have all these parts in the right orientation up to top to bottom, just so it makes it easier. One thing I'm noticing here with this green part, I'm going to bring this back into focus, okay, is actually beneath it I had this little other part here, this clear part. So just remember that this clear part actually goes underneath the green part when it comes to reassembly. So we'll cover that later. And then here's our display. Okay. Now these characters you'll see here, there are actually still some graphics printed on the display. Some displays from Casio, whether they're positive or negative, will have pre-printed graphics on them that will continue to stay in place even after the battery has been disassembled. Some of them are just residual images where after a while they'll disappear on their own. But this one is nice and crisp, and you can see it's pre-printed on there. Now, I told this to the customer in advance, and you might want to know this too, that some watches have pre-printed parts on the display, and when you remove that polarizing film to convert it to a positive or a negative, those parts, those pre-printed parts, actually get lost. And even if you replace the polarizing film, they don't come back again. So the customer was well aware of that. He says, go ahead with it. I'm completely fine. Just something to keep in mind for yourself, that you could lose some small details if you decide to convert from a stock factory negative to positive, or vice versa, factory negative to positive, or factory positive to negative. Okay. In this case, I don't know if this graphic here will remain. Okay, it would be great if it does, but we're going to find out shortly. All right, so now when it comes to doing a positive display or a positive display conversion, we need to find the polarizing film. So the best way to think of this part here in front of you, okay, is by referencing my fingers here on the side. I'm going to hold my fingers like this. And just for simplification, if we hold the display like this, we're looking at the top layer here, and we're looking at the top layer here, okay? Now if I turn this display to the side, okay, it might be hard to see on camera. I'm going to turn my fingers to the side. There are actually multiple layers, just like I have multiple layers of my fingers here on the left side. The polarizing film is this topmost layer, this part right here. And so what we want to do is actually find a way to wedge out this polarizing film, put a brand new one on, turn it 90 degrees to the right or to the left, and then that will give us the positive effect. If you were working with a positive display and you were converting to negative, the same is true. You would remove the polarizing film, put a brand new film on, turn it 90 degrees to the right or left, and then you would get the negative display. Okay, so exact same principle. So how do we find this top part of the film? Because look, it's so hard to read between the layers here. You can kind of make it out here. That black on the right looks like the polarizing film, and we have the middle, and then we have the back, right? So that top thin black part on the right is what we want to remove. Now it can be hard to figure out how to get a tool in there. So what I usually do is I take a thin tool like this guitar pick, I drag it across the top polarizing film, and then I wait for the pick to jump. And I will feel the pick jump, and I'll also hear it jump down to that next layer. And that tells me that I'm right at that point where I can wedge this in between and start separating it apart. So let's see if we can do that here. I'm going to drag this across, and you can hear it. So that part where my pick drops is exactly where I want to start wedging this off, okay? This is plastic, so it's safe to be dragging across this. I'm also replacing the polarizing film with something brand new, so that's okay for me to be putting some micro scratches on this polarizing film right now with a guitar pick. Okay, so once you find that layer, okay, we're going to put a towel down, and we need to get some other tools to help us. So I like to use a guitar pick here. Okay, I've got a small bowl here with some goof off. This is goof off, by the way. It helps to remove residue, sticky residue. You can also use Goo Gone. That polarizing film here at the top is actually glued to this layer, so when we separate this out, there's going to be some residual glue here on the middle layer that we need to clean up before putting the new film onto it. And then to apply that goof off, I have some Q-tips. All right, so what I like to do first is soak a Q-tip. Okay, go to the edges of this and just apply the goof off to that. And what that will do is it will start to loosen that glue underneath the polarizing film from the sides. Because the key here is we want to get the sides loosened first, so that way we can put our guitar pick and wedge it all the way through. Okay, so after you've applied it on the full perimeter of that, go ahead and let that sit for maybe 5 minutes, let the chemical do its work, and then we're going to move to mechanical and do the guitar pick and see if it's loose enough. Okay, so I'll check back in 5 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. I'm going to take my guitar pick here. I've soaked it in a little bit of the goof off, drag it to listen for that drop. Once you find that, go ahead and try to start wedging that polarizing film off. So in this case, very easy. Okay, I put my pick here. Sorry, just trying to get this in focus for you. There we go. Drag this up here to the top. Wedged my pick in. Oh, a little bit slippery. There we go. You can see the pick is starting to go through there at the top. Once that's through, just go ahead and keep that guitar pick parallel and rock it back and forth. That's the nice thing about the pick, is it's rounded, so it makes it very easy to rock. Okay, once I'm kind of more all the way through, I'm going to go ahead and re-soak this pick just to allow more of that goof off to get inside. Okay, and then work from one end to the other. Try to keep the polarizing film in one piece, so that way it's easy and neat to remove. Okay, and we'll separate the polarizing film off. Okay, so perfect. Now that I've removed that, okay, you can see here that the pre-printed graphic is below. It did not disappear. In past mods that I've done, the graphic was actually printed on the polarizing film, which means it's going to be lost when I apply a new one. In this case, it stays on. However, if you look here, these little red dots that were going over it, that little red graphic, is on the old polarizing film. So those red dots, those little red arrows, are going to be lost. Okay, there are some people who are much more talented than me that know how to print those on here. I don't know how to do it. Again, I checked with the customer. I said there's a risk that this could happen, and he was okay with it. I've worked with him many times before. So just know that this is a perfect example of what stays back and what gets removed sometimes when you do this mod. Okay, I'm going to take this film, save this for later, just in case we need it. Okay, now you can see here we have that middle layer and a lot of glue residue here, those little clumps, right? So we need to apply more goof off. So I'm going to take a Q-tip, I'm going to soak the tip in that goof off, and I'm going to be very generous in applying that liquid all over the front. At this point, I'm not rubbing anything, I'm just kind of damping it and soaking it. Okay, and once you've applied it everywhere, go ahead and let that sit again for another 5 minutes. The longer you let it sit, the more the chemical has time to work and the less rubbing you're going to have to do with the Q-tip. So check back in another 5 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes here. I have my Q-tip again, soaking it in the goof off. And now what we're going to do is start trying to get this glue off. So I'm kind of holding it at a 45-degree angle, the Q-tip, and just making circular motions here. Make sure your Q-tip is as wet as possible with the goof off. Okay, you're going to notice bigger chunks of glue start to appear as they kind of clump together. Okay, once you've kind of rubbed all around the display, you can take a clean microfiber cloth and just wipe away in one direction. Okay, you might notice this little glue strip here that comes off that was holding those thin white pieces earlier. That's okay if that comes off. It's both on the top and the bottom. Okay. All right, once you've kind of wiped everything dry, go ahead and repeat again. Saturate your Q-tip with goof off. Get the entire surface wet with this. Okay, and then rub again. You don't have to wait another 5 minutes again because it's already doing its job from before. Okay, I'm going to do circular motions again. Once you've kind of covered the whole display, take your microfiber cloth and again wipe off. You want to keep doing this until you notice two things happening. Number one, you're going to take your display, you're going to rotate it in the light, and you're going to look for any glue residue. So right there you can see you have a little bit of glue left. Okay, a little bit more here on the sides. So this whole display should look like the middle of this. You see how that's nice and clear of any residue? The whole display should look like this. Secondly, when you're rubbing with your cloth, you should be hearing a squeaky sound, which means that it's completely clean, and that's why it's making that sound with the towel. So right now this is pretty clean, but I still don't have that sound that I'm looking for. So I'm going to just keep repeating the same thing. Okay, repeat one more time here for you. Soak your Q-tip, soak the display, then rub off in a circular motion. Okay, take your cloth and remove that glue. Okay, I'm going to save some time on the video, pause here, and just keep repeating those steps, and then we'll check back in. Okay, so I think we've got this all cleaned here. Let me just show you what this looks like and sounds like now. There's that squeaky sound. Okay, we're getting to the bare display with no glue, and then when I rub here, there we go. Also pay special attention to the corners on the outside of the display. That's where a lot of the glue likes to sit. Okay, the more you get that glue off, the better your display will look at the end. Okay, get a new towel here. And let's dry this off. Okay, try to limit touching the front of that with your fingers. Okay, run your towel around the sides just to clean up any more of the liquid, and then the back, of course. And here we have display nice and clean. All right, at this point we're going to wash our hands because there's that goof off is a little bit oily. Okay, and we'll be right back. Okay, hands washed, display's nice and dry, so we need to go and cut out a new polarizing film. So this is polarizing film here. Okay, this is sold in multiple sizes. This is size A4. Okay, now you have two types of film that you can buy. You can have adhesive and non-adhesive. Regardless of which one you get, the polarizing film is actually composed of 3 layers. So you have the middle layer, which is your polarizing film, a top protective layer, and a bottom protective layer. Kind of like how you have protective layers on a sticker. Now in this case, this is non-adhesive, so there's no stickiness here between any of the layers. If you have the adhesive version, one part of this middle polarizing film is going to be sticky on the back like a sticker. Application is a little bit different because with the adhesive you put it directly on. With the non-adhesive you have to kind of do the reverse. You're mounting it probably to the masking, but we'll be doing it with the non-adhesive today, okay? So when you have your film, you have to take into account 2 things. Number 1, which side of the film should I be on, because it does matter. So right now I'm going to show you what happens. So right now I'm on this side of the film. If I rotate it this way, I have a little bit of purple and then black. Oh, that almost looks like what we had before. Okay, a little bit of yellow, blue, green, and purple, right? So this almost looks like a positive right now, and you might be tempted to cut it out in this orientation. However, if you see those gradient colors, those blues, those yellows, and those pinks, you're on the wrong side. You want to flip your sheet over to the other side because you should only be seeing white and black. So let's do this again. White, 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 and all of a sudden, oh wait, did I get this wrong? Maybe this is the gradient side. Okay, I'm trying to look through my viewfinder, so I missed it. So actually, this is the wrong side. So here, if I rotate this, that almost looks like positive. If I rotate it again, black, but we're getting those gradient colors. If I flip this over, we're just getting black, and we're just getting white, okay? There's a little tinge of purple right around there, but I don't see any other of those greens, blues, and pinks, which would tell me that I'm on the wrong side, okay? There's a little bit of bluish green there. Okay, but this side is definitely more reactive with the colors. Okay, so that's kind of how you tell which side of the polarizing film to be on. Okay, so we're going to be on this side. Okay, now that we have the correct side, we need to get the orientation. So if we were in this orientation, we're having the factory negative, which we don't want. If I rotate it 90 degrees to the left, we have positive, which is what we want. So there's that 90-degree orientation that I was talking about. And that's really all the company Casio is doing from the factory. They have, you know, machines doing this obviously, but they have polarizing film. If that model is supposed to be negative, they go ahead and do it this way and apply the film that way. If they want it positive, they do it this way. But the film is probably going to be the same from the factory. So here we have our positive display. We're going to want to cut it out to that size. Now, if I was working with a adhesive version of polarizing film, what I would go ahead and do at this point is take a Sharpie, kind of trace around the perimeter of this display, cut that out, and then stick that polarizing film right onto the display. Because I'm working with non-adhesive, okay, what I'm actually going to do is make it a little bit simpler on myself. I'm going to cut this polarizing film out a little bit larger, and rather than have it be the size of that tiny display, here we have our case. I'm going to cut it out a little bit larger to be the size of this part, kind of the silver border inside the case. And the reason I'm doing that is if I cut it out to a smaller size like this and it's not sticking to the display because it's non-adhesive, there is the chance for the polarizing film to kind of shift left, right, up, or down in this much larger case. And when that happens, when I reassemble the watch, it may not look proper. There might be some of the display that's covered and some of the display that's not covered. So what I'm going to do is cut out this size that fills the entire inner portion of that case, and that way there's no room for that polarizing film to shift when it's reassembled. Okay, so we're going to cut it out there. So now that I have the right side that I'm on, okay, and the right orientation, once you have that and you're lined up, you're going to carefully lift up your film, if it's non-adhesive, reverse it over, and then put that down and then trace the shape that you want. Okay, we have to reverse it because remember, when it comes to reassembly, everything is the opposite. Okay, this is again only for non-adhesive film. If this is adhesive polarizing film, go ahead and just cut this the size of the display and stick it right on. Okay, so I have it here. I know that's the right side. I know that's the right orientation. I'm going to flip my polarizing film over. Take a thin Sharpie here and just roughly trace where I need to cut out by looking from the top. Okay. This is also going to be the back of the polarizing film because it's facing the back of the watch. I'm going to write a little B here. Again, remember our polarizing film is covered in 2 protective layers, so I'm not actually drawing on the polarizing film itself, just that protective layer. Okay, once I've made that mark, I can set this to the side just a little bit. Okay, we're going to take some scissors and cut this film out. It's probably going to be a little bit too large initially, which is fine. We can always trim it down. Okay, we have the back here. Let's go back to our case and let's just test fit this and see where we need to cut. So I'm going to put this in. Okay, I need to take a little bit off the sides, obviously. It's not sitting flush with the silver part. Okay, the top and the bottom look pretty good, but I'm just going to make it a little bit neater by cutting it straight on the top and the bottom there. Put our case back on. Again, we're trying to limit that dust going into it. And let's just go ahead and trim this up. Okay, you don't want to take too much off initially because remember, measure twice, cut once. We can always take off more if need be. Okay, there we go. Try to fit this in again. Okay, and that looks good. So now you'll notice here we have a little bit of extra space here on the top and a little bit here on the bottom, right? If you can, if you're able to cut it exactly to that size, that's probably best. But even if you don't, the most important thing is you just want to make sure that the inner part here in black underneath it, you see that? That part is completely covered even up to the edges, right? So once that part is covered, you want to have a little bit of extra here on the top and the bottom overlapping, so that way we can put a little bit of glue tape and stick it on top of that, okay? So let me check one more time, make sure that that's fully covered. Yep, that looks good. So we'll go ahead and lift this up and out. Okay, and let's apply some glue tape. We'll set this filter off to the side for now. The glue tape that I'm going to be using here is double-sided. It's made by a company called T-Rex. There's the brand, super glue tape, readily available at like Walmart or Home Depot. Okay, I have a separate video actually, if you kind of look through my archives, that shows you how to apply this tape, so I'm not really going to show you that detail here on camera. So if at this point you're not sure how to cut it, just go to that video and I will link it in the description below. Okay, so let's cover this up for now. Here's my glue tape here on the side. I actually have a very small strip here. Okay, in white that I've already separated. So I'm going to take my blade here and then just a small tool here, and I'm going to cut 2 tiny strips. Okay, so here is a good view of what that looks like. Okay, you can see the glue tape there kind of separated there in clear, and then the protective backing on one side. Okay, so I'm going to lay both of these little strips down here on the side. Okay, take off the white protective backing. Okay, and again, I know the tape is not going to be easy to see from this zoomed out position, so again, just watch that link below if you want to see in more detail what I'm doing. So I have my 2 strips here on the corner. Okay, I'm going to lift up on one of those. And I like to leave it attached to the tip of my blade here. Okay, kind of like so. So there's my little strip. We're going to lift up on this one here, and we're going to apply it to the top portion over here. Okay. Make sure when you're applying this, you can kind of roll it off your blade if that's how you're doing it. Make sure that there is a little bit of a gap here you can see between the end of the tape and the display, because the tape, as you can see here, can be moved just a little bit. And when we reassemble this watch, it'll kind of squish that tape and cause it to spread a little bit in all directions. And so if it's too close to the edge, that tape will actually spread into the visible part, and obviously you don't want to see that when your watch is reassembled. So I'm just pressing it down first, and then just using my toothpick to kind of make more of a space here between the edge of that tape and the glass to the right of it. Okay, kind of like that. Okay, now we're going to repeat for the other side as well. Okay, and there we go. We've got our tape. Now, one thing I completely forgot to mention is we're doing a colored filter on this. So I know I was saying I was going to take the polarizing film and put that in already, that would be fine. If you want to go ahead and just leave it positive for now, you would go ahead and just proceed with this step. But this customer wants a colored filter on this. So we're going to put our color down first and then the polarizing film on top of that. Okay, so let's find our color here. This is, cover this back up. This is a sample booklet by Lee Filters. There's other companies that you can use, but I like this because this sample pack has almost every color they have available for sale in a smaller size, so that way it's easy and quick to reference for your mods. And then if you find one that you like let's say this green over here, okay, this Lee green, then all you have to do is, if you want something larger than this, you can go to eBay or Lee's website and order this name and code number, so 121 Lee green. And there's some specifications on the filter color for you. Okay, so this customer wanted to try green and then straw. He says, kind of choose which one you think is best. I flipped this watch over and I'm taking a look at the bracelet here. We have a lot of colors going on. So we have these, these almost maroon, the silver, the black, and the blues, the gold, obviously. Okay, but right now, I'm definitely leaning less towards green. He wanted like a Kermit green. Of course, looks are subjective, so if you like a different color, go with that. This is the closest I could find to that green, and for me, that just doesn't really match very well. We talked about straw. Straw was actually a pretty good choice here. Let me see if I can find that again. There's the straw colored filter. Okay, not too bad, but also not too bold. It's a little bit lighter than the gold here, and I want to pick that up. So I actually think the wheat, and I'm going to check with the customer. Every time I'm done with the mod, I always take pictures and send it to them for their approval before I mail it out. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go on my gut here and go with wheat. Not exactly straw by name, but I think it's a much better look, and hey, easy enough to switch to something else if we don't like it. So here is my wheat colored filter. Take our watch here. Okay, and we need to trace this filter to be the exact size of where we put our glue tape. So very similar to how we did it with the negative display. We're going to take our filter there, kind of loosely put it over. Okay, take our Sharpie, and then just kind of look from the top down and trace a rough shape of where we want it to be. Okay, like so. Cover this back up. Let's go ahead and cut this out. Try to limit touching the part that you're going to keep. Okay. And let's go ahead and wipe this first. Okay, got a clean microfiber cloth here. Okay, make sure to lay it down on somewhere flat because these filters wrinkle very easily. Repeat for the other side. Okay, let's clean up our work area here. Okay, go back to our watch. Okay, I'm just using my blaster here, my dust blaster, to get any dust off of this filter that I just cut, and then we'll test fit this in. Okay, again, I probably should have done this before I put in those glue strips. I completely forgot we were doing a colored filter. I thought we were just doing a straight negative or positive conversion, so I don't want to tap this all the way down. Just want to loosely put it in and see where I need to trim. So I need to trim a little bit off the left and the right, but everything else looks pretty good in terms of fitment. So let's get this back up. Okay, I'm just grabbing the filter by the sides. Okay, we'll give a little trim here to the left and to the right. Okay, set this back down. Okay, needs just a little bit more on the left here, or on the bottom from your viewpoint. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and lightly tap this down. I have this toothpick with a little silicone tip here at the end. And now we'll press that filter onto the glue tape, which looks great. Should also note, before you put your filter down, go ahead and blast the inside of the case to get any dust out. I saw that there was no dust in there, but just another thing to do before you put the filter on. And then now that that's assembled, okay, we're going to put another 2 strips of glue tape, top and bottom, for our polarizing film. So I need to cut those out. So I'm going to pause here just to save some time. You already saw me do it before, and I will come back when those other strips of glue tape are put on the top and bottom. Okay, so we have our 2 strips of glue tape put here on top of the colored filter. Okay, what I'm going to do here is gently get some of that dust out. What I like to do also is I have this little black piece of paper on my workstation. Makes it easier to spot any dust because of the contrast here. So if I see any, I'll just go ahead and do that. If you still see a little bit of dust that maybe is a little bit stubborn, you can take a clean, dry Q-tip and just manipulate that little bit out. Okay, then we're going to take our polarizing film here. Again, remember this is the back. Okay, if you're confusing this part from this part because it's see-through, just remember that where the Sharpie looks dull is the wrong side, where it looks nice and crisp is the side that you wrote on. Okay, and that's the orientation of the letter B. So that's the 12 o'clock, that's the 6 o'clock, so that's how I'm going to put it back here into my case. And I need to peel the top layer of this, the part that's going to be facing down on the watch. Okay, so let's try to get that in focus for you so you can see it. Okay, there's that top layer being removed. We'll take our film here and okay, once you feel like you've got lined up, go ahead and push down on the top and bottom of that film. You can use a toothpick and that will just adhere it to the glue strip. Okay, then we're going to want to take the back layer off, and it's already a little bit peeled here on the corner. And then take that part off, and there's the little Sharpie that we drew on that one. Okay, so now you want to be very careful not to touch the inside of that film because it is very scratch prone. Okay, so now we're going to take a look around the perimeter here. Just make sure that we're fully covering, especially these corners. Okay, everything looks great here. Okay, take my case back, dust that a little bit, and put this back on. And now we will go ahead and reassemble. So we're now going to be working in the reverse from right to left here. So we're going to take this part here and your display. Okay, if we take this part, you'll see that it has some teeth here pointing in one direction, so we want those teeth pointing towards you. This full circle cut out facing downward. We're going to take our display here with the little graphic here at the top, flip this over, and then put it down like so. It's okay if it's a little bit dirty here on the back. Next, we're going to take this part, this clear part and the green part here. The clear part will go in first in this orientation. You'll notice that it's a little bit wider towards the top. So this will just go down here, and it fits only in one direction because there's all these little cutouts around. We're going to take this green part next. You'll notice we have the grid here in black on one side and blank on the other. So the blank part will face down and these two silver circles will point towards the bottom. Okay, just tap it down lightly. Okay, then we're going to take, let's see here. I believe the springs are next. Let's see, we put that down there. Okay, yeah. So after this, we're going to get our 4 springs from our little tray here. You've got these 2 longer ones and then the 2 really tiny ones. Okay, be really delicate using your tweezers to get these because they tend to shoot around. There you go. So there we have our springs. Okay. So the 2 longer springs are pretty easy to do. This is what they look like. You'll notice that they are wider towards one end here on the left and skinnier on the other. The skinny end is going to be going down, and we're going to be placing them into these 2 holes here, 1 and 2. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to take my spring, grab it by the wider end here, and then go here and insert it at the bottom. Okay, like that, and then we're going to do the other one. These little guys always like to jump. There we go. So those 2. Then we're going to take the tiny ones. These are a little bit trickier to put on, and just like the bigger ones, they're wider here towards one end and skinnier on the other. In this case though, the wider end is going to go first. Or actually, before that, to make this easier, let's set those springs aside. We're going to take this piece here, okay, hold it in this orientation, and then we're going to lay this right over the green part like so, okay, and then lightly tap the sides so that it kind of clips in place. You'll hear a clicking sound on the left and the right, okay. Then you're going to take your little thin strips over here and you're going to insert them into a slot here on the top. And then one here at the bottom. Okay, and just lightly tap those. And then right here in silver and another one here on the left. Then we're going to insert our short springs with the fat side of that spring pointing downward. Okay, just lightly push down on it so it sits down in its housing. And then the other one. Okay, like so. Perfect. All right. Now we're going to carefully move this to the side. We're going to take this piece now, circuit board. We're going to have this black part facing down towards the bottom. And you see the little coils here on the top. Those are going to insert into the wider slot here at the top. So we're going to flip this over and just carefully set this down. Okay, then gently tap this in place. Okay, now when you put this together, you're going to notice a tiny black tooth here and a tiny black tooth over here kind of pop up in these little cutouts in the circuit board, so that's how it tells you it's aligned. Next, you're going to take this part. Okay, now with this part, the only thing you need to remember here is this little spring for the speaker. Okay, we're going to insert that into our hole that we marked with the Sharpie. Okay, now that spring tends to fall off if you turn this upside down, because what we need to do right now is take this part and flip it upside down onto this part. But if we flip this upside down, the spring will fall off. If we take this part and try to put it on that part, the circuit board will separate from the bottom piece and then the springs will fall out. So what you want to do is just leave the right part as is on the table. I'm going to cut out the glare here for you. There we go. Okay, take this part, and from behind, you want to grab that spring with your finger very gently, like I'm doing here. Rotate this over, hold that spring in place, and then just set this down on top of the other piece. And then gently push that piece down. You should see a little silver part right here visible through the little black hole, and push. Now at this point they're still not really well connected because you need to hold it in place with this part. You're going to take this part, you'll notice that the teeth are pointing to the right, so we're going to put the teeth facing down, the flat part here facing up, and then we're going to push this from behind, and you're going to hear some clicks as those little silver clips on the side start to grab everything together. There we go. Okay, now what we can do is give it a little bit of pressure so it's holding it in place. You want to inspect each clip as we work our way around. So there's one clip there, make sure it's clipping over. Another one there. Okay, and then lastly here at the top in black, there should be another clip here. Okay, and then we'll flip this over, and there we go. We've reassembled everything. Now you'll notice that the display is still blank because remember the polarizing film is actually still in our watch case over here on the left. So we won't see anything until we put it all together. So now we'll take the watch case. This is the 12 o'clock. This is the 6 o'clock here. Okay, gently lift up on that case. Take your air blaster here, just kind of blast gently in one direction. You can also flip this upside down and blast from underneath to kind of get rid of dust, and then the gravity will kind of do the work and bring the dust down. Then take your module, blast this with your air blaster away from it so it doesn't get dust inside the case. We're going to put the module back in this orientation. Okay. And right over here, I'm going to point this out to you, because this can be a little bit tricky to line up. But right over here, okay, you'll see this part in gray wraps around, and then right here at the tip, there's this little half circle. That little half circle has to meet this other half circle here on the module. So that shows you the direction that you need to put this. It can only go in one way. So put in that little half circle first, and then once that's pressed in place, you can press down at the 6 o'clock position like so. Okay. Oops, sorry for all that rubbing of my chair. Okay, next what we want to do, one thing I should note here, your pushers are connected to the inside by these little stems. Now on some watches, the stems don't automatically push themselves out. You have to push them out manually. On this particular watch, these buttons are spring-loaded, so the stems go back automatically. So I was able to check around here before putting down the module to make sure that those stems were pushed back. But just give it a look. If you find that one or a few of those stems are really pushed inside, just take a flat tool from the inside and push them back out. Okay, then put in your module. So now we've inserted the module there. You'll notice these little silver parts here, this little thin strip, and then this stem here that connects to the button. So what happens is you want the button to be hitting the fat part of that little metal strip. So you're going to put a little pressure here with one finger and then gently pry inward on that thin metal strip. And that'll kind of make sure it sits behind the stem. Same thing here, here, and then here. So all four. Okay. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is an all clear. So we're going to flip the module over and we're going to look for a little hole called AC. So here's AC and it's pointing to this hole right over here. And what you're going to do is take a paper clip and then you're going to bend the paper clip like a U. You're going to touch one end of that paper clip into the AC hole and the other end you can touch anywhere else that's metal. The instructions kind of say to go for this bottom negative sign here at the 6 o'clock position, but you really don't have to. Anywhere that's metal is going to be perfectly fine to do an all clear on this. Okay, and then when we go ahead and flip the watch over, okay, you can see that our display is working. Now, if we did not do a proper all clear, and you just changed the battery or did this procedure, what you're going to notice is right underneath the P and S here are going to be the letters CHG, and they will be blinking. And you'll actually notice that when that's happening, when you press the mode button, here I'm switching between the modes, but if you see that CHG, you won't be able to switch modes and your backlight won't work. All of these buttons will not work as long as you see that CHG right underneath that PS. So what that tells you is you didn't do a proper all clear. It could mean that maybe you put the paper clip into the wrong AC hole or you didn't hold it long enough. I would probably recommend holding it down for at least 5 to 10 seconds until that CHG disappears. But yeah, let's go back over here and take a look really quick before we reassemble this the rest of the way. And we've got this really nice wheat color, and I think that goes pretty well with the bracelet, right? So you got those little bits of gold here, almost like a bronze color, and I think that just picks it up really, really nicely. Okay, now before we go any further, I want to check my filter here to make sure that it's been properly applied. I'm especially going to turn the watch to the side, look here at the corners, make sure that there isn't any bare gray color display being shown, which could mean that I either didn't cover it properly with enough polarizing film or wheat colored filter. So that looks great. Okay. Then I'm going to flip it back over and we can continue with the assembly of this. We're going to take this part next. Okay. And we're going to put it in this orientation. This is 12 o'clock here, 6 o'clock here at the bottom. Okay, insert that there. Then we're going to take our O-ring. Now with your O-ring, you kind of want to hold it underneath some bright direct light. Check for that glisten that you see over here, which tells you the O-ring is well lubricated. If it's dry, you won't have that shine. And what you can do is take a Q-tip with 100% silicone oil and just lightly dab all around the ring. I think in other videos I've said you can go ahead and put oil between your finger and then run the O-ring through your finger. What I've actually noticed is when you do that, you end up stretching the O-ring just a little bit, and it becomes just a little bit too large to fit in this trough here around the case, and so it makes it hard for the O-ring to sit properly. So we're going to set this down in there, make sure that trough is clear of any debris, and go ahead and lightly tap that O-ring down into that section. Okay, and we're going to take our case back here. We're going to flip it over. Again, this is the 12 o'clock, this is the 6. Okay, and you're going to put your case back in this orientation with the lettering. Okay, and just go ahead and put that back on top. Okay, go ahead and look from the top here to make sure those holes line up with the holes in the case. And then we're going to take our case back screws here. And just loosely put those in for now. Okay, then we're going to take our screwdriver and loosely attach them in. Okay. Now before I fully tighten them, I'm going to turn this to the side and check the little seam between the case back and the case to make sure that that O-ring isn't being pinched, because that is one of your main defenses for water resistance over here. So if that's pinched, water can get in there. And then once that looks good, we can fully tighten this the rest of the way. There we go. So that looks great. So now that that case back is in, I want to go ahead and test the functions of the watch, because everything is pretty much reassembled except the bracelet. So what we're going to do is start here with the mode button here at the bottom left, and listen for that sound. The sound tells us that our spring was properly put in. Let's go to the stopwatch here. Let's start with the bottom, continue with the bottom right. Top left. Go back to our main time. And then let's test out the backlight here. Okay, so everything looks good. Great, now we can go ahead and continue with the reassembly of the bracelet. So we'll take our spring bar that we saved from before, put that back in here. And then I remembered when I took apart this clasp that he was in the third micro position from the middle. So I want to return it back to the same side, so that way it fits him perfectly when he gets it. So we're going to insert one end of that spring bar by supporting it from the back and putting it into that third hole. Once it's in that third hole, the other one we can rest right on top of the clasp. Take something that's non-metallic, because you have to kind of push down on the metal and you don't want to scratch it. I'm taking my toothpick here and then get it inserted into that hole. Give the bracelet a slight twist, a little pull and a jiggle just to make sure it's firmly in place. And there you go. We've got our watch assembled. Let me get a little display here so you can see it better. Okay. Very cool. Very happy with that wheat filter in there. And we'll put it over here. This is way too big for my wrist, so it won't look good if I modeled it that way. But here's a fake wrist here to give you a wrist shot. And we're all set. And then I'll go ahead and set the date and time, because we did an all clear here. and set it to his location before getting it out in the mail. So there we go. That's how to do this particular mod. This is a quite lengthy one anytime you're going to be doing a display conversion and adding a filter. But as you can see, if you go step by step, try to lay out your parts in order, take pictures if you need to along the way, and then hopefully this video following it, usually, you might stumble here and there, but after a while, you're going to become very used to doing this, and you can go on to mod your other Casios as well. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. If you have any other suggestions for mods or any questions, please put them down below. And as always, have fun. Oh, by the way, please follow my Instagram. I put it in the description. I have lots of other pictures of other mods and other Casio watches and my other general EDC collection that I own there as well. It would be great to get your guys' support on that page as well. And as always, guys, have fun, and I will see you on the next one.